The paintwork of the body of this car, unlike other representatives of the brand, tolerates the hardships of everyday use well, plus the most vulnerable spots, thresholds and edges of the arches are covered with protective plastic. But on the plastic parts, the paint does not hold so well, especially for pre-styling versions. Things are not bad with the corrosion resistance of body iron. Despite the fact that the metal is not galvanized, even in places when the paintwork is damaged, rust does not appear immediately. Nevertheless, additional anti-corrosion treatment will not be superfluous. The most vulnerable places are the attachment points of the plastic body kit. The owners will find out about the presence of corrosion in them too late, since they are hidden from view and are visible only after partial disassembly of the car. Often you can find rust on the trunk lid and hood, split spots bloom. It is also worth noting that the quality of plastic is not the best, which is prone to damage with the advent of cold weather. Most often, the protection of the front arches and the clips that secure the bumpers and grille break. It should be noted that damage to parts occurs not only from impact, but also when trying to dismantle in frosty weather. For outdoor enthusiasts, the rear bumper is at risk. Due to unsuccessful geometry, it is easy to catch it while driving over bumps. The front optics also received a lot of criticism, especially on pre-styling versions, which not only shine badly, but also quickly override, withstand 80–90,000 kilometers. After restyling, the manufacturer changed the shape of the headlights, thereby solving the problem. But the fogging of optics is a proprietary feature of the model, regardless of the year of manufacture. Additional sealing of the block is required. Due to the unfortunate location, the board of the left rear light often fails, located close to the body, which causes it to get very hot and burn out. A malfunction leads to a failure of the brake light. The original windshield, which can launch a web after hitting a small pebble, does not differ in survivability. The windshield wiper trapezoid also needs attention, especially for cars with a rain sensor. With frequent work in winter, the rods wear out quickly. The door handles are also not famous for their reliability. At first it starts to jam, then the lock cable attachment point breaks, after which the door will open only from the outside. For Nissan Qashqai, two gasoline engines were offered: 1.6 HR16DE 115 horsepower, 2.0 MR20DE 141 horsepower, and three diesel engines: 1.5 K9K 110 horsepower, 1.6 R9M 130 horsepower, 2.0 M9R 150 horsepower. Gasoline engines are very reliable, and if they are not tormented by overheating and serviced in a timely manner, they will not cause significant problems. The timing is endowed with a chain drive, which as a rule does not require attention up to 200,000 kilometers. However, there were times when the chain began to ring closer to 150,000 kilometers. Often, in addition to the chain, sprockets, shoes, you also have to change an expensive phase regulator. Since there are no hydraulic lifters here, every 80,000 kilometers it becomes necessary to adjust the valves. But for cars with HBO, this procedure should not carried out more often, once every 40–50,000 kilometers. On many instances, with a mileage of more than 100,000 km, an oil burner is observed, 1–300 grams per 1,000 km, which dealers attribute to a feature of the unit. However, this is not entirely true. Narrow rings are used in the piston, which lie down over time. The cylinder head of motors is sensitive to temperature fluctuations, warping mating surfaces, bolt and spark plug tightening torque, cracking, so the use of a torque wrench is highly recommended. Of the less significant troubles, one can distinguish the tendency of the throttle to cocking, speeds flawed, a small resource of ignition modules, rear engine mounts, and an even whistling alternator belt. Many Nissan Qashqai owners have encountered such a nuisance as a decrease in engine power in hot weather caused by a failure of the air temperature sensor built into the DMRV. In the cooling system, radiators, rusts, and a heater exchanger begins to leak after 5–6 years are considered vulnerable. In a 2-liter engine, after 5–6 years of operation, the pan begins to flow. The resource of the internal combustion engine to the capital is 3–400,000 kilometers. The range of diesel engines is the development of the French company Renault. The weakest unit is well known for such models as Fluence and Megane, which I have already talked about earlier. The main ailments of the motor include burnout of the pistons, cracking of the connection rod bearings, and the small resource of the turbine. Despite the fact that the most successful versions of this engine with Siemens fuel equipment were used in Qashqai, in our realities, injectors and high-pressure fuel pumps serve less than in Europe. Also, a modest resource, by European standards, has a particulate filter and the USR valve. On older cars, breakdowns are also possible to the electrical part. The boost pressure and crankshaft position sensor fail. When removing the old oil filter, check it for copper saving and bluish turbidity. If any, get ready for the engine capital. The 1.6 motor appeared after restyling and is rarely found on our market. Like all DCI diesels, this engine is sensitive to the quality of diesel fuel. Of the main disadvantages, it is worth noting the short service life of the timing chain, about 150,000 kilometers, the tendency to code the idle speed controller, and the DMVR sensor. Piston rings and valve stem seals are quite problematic here, rarely withstand more than 200,000 kilometers. Failure to comply with the service intervals increases the risk of deformation of the camshaft and connecting rods. Also, the disease can provoke a decrease in the level of oil caused by an oil burner. If you do not keep track of the condition of the cooling system, there is a high probability of antifreeze getting into the oil. The main complaints about the 2-liter unit are caused by the short service life of the Bosch Piazza injectors. The problem is aggravated by the non-repairability of the part and the high cost of a new one. The weak points include the EGR valve with the DPF filter, and if the valve can be cleaned, then the filter can only be replaced. Due to the high cost, they cut it out and install an emulator instead. This engine did not bypass the problem with the crankshaft liners, they turn when the oil pump performance decreases. Adds a headache and the crankshaft oil seal. The fact that it is built into the cover and changes with it. For cars with high mileage, attention may be required by the crankshaft pulley, the damper dries out, the crankcase ventilation system, the efficiency of the separator decreases, as a result, vapors enter the air filter, and the valve on the fuel rail loses tightness and the car starts poorly. The chain used in the timing drive, with proper maintenance, can last up to 300,000 kilometers, and the turbine is enough for about the same amount. For Nissan Qashqai 5 and 6 speed manuals, Qashqai J1011E and J1015E CVTs, as well as Qashqai J613E automatic transmission, when paired with the 2-liter diesel engine, were available. Manual transmissions, if you monitor the level of lubricant, do not cause unnecessary problems. Clutch under moderate loads nurses 100–120,000 kilometers. The only thing that the owner blames is the excessive noise of operation, especially when the gas is released. This nuisance is a feature of the KP and is not treated in any way. Sometimes, changing the oil helps to reduce the noise level. The variator is also not bad, but only if it was in the same hand, it was carefully operated and regularly serviced. If you are going to buy a Nissan Qashqai with this type of gearbox, you should not be aware that this is a time bomb, since replacing the box will cost thousands of dollars. It is almost possible to diagnose the condition of the variator. The only thing that can be done is to check the oil for chips and a burning smell. It would not be superfluous to pay attention to the condition of the cooling radiator located behind the bumper beam. If there is a lot of dirt in it, there is a risk that the variator has overheated. Under heavy loads, the first transmission repair may be needed closer to 150,000 kilometers. As a rule, the cone bearing, cones, belt and step motor are the first to be surrendered. If you rarely change the lubricant, the wear products of the cones will eventually clog the solenoids in the valve body and the pressure-reducing valve in the oil pump. As a result, the box will experience oil starvation. In addition, the presence of chips in the lubricant accelerates the wear of the valve bores. A faulty pump pressure relief valve results in either too much or too little oil pressure in the hydraulic system. Often, there is such a nuisance as the failure of the micro switch, limit switch, in the event of a malfunction of which the parking mode is not removed. I already spoke in more detail about the weaknesses of the variator in the Nissan exterior review. The machine has a good resource, but is sensitive to the purity of the lubricant. Subject to maintenance intervals, the box will last more than 250,000 kilometers. The weak points of the automatic transmission include the small resource of the valve body solenoids and torque converter clutches. If you operate the car in the sleeper on the floor mode, the resource of the gas turbine engine blocking pads will significantly decrease. They will last 60–70,000 kilometers. 4-wheel drive. All-wheel drive here is conditional and is designed to provide better connection with the road on ice and to overcome light off-road conditions. A multi-plate clutch is responsible for connecting the rear axle, which is very afraid of overheating, so you should not consider the car as a full-fledged CUV. If the car is operated in urban mode, the clutch will not cause problem. But for outdoor enthusiasts, in addition to the clutch, the razdatka and crosses of the cardan shaft are subject to increased wear. On both axles, Nissan Qashqai uses independent suspension, in front McPherson strut, in back multi-link. The chassis turned out to be surprisingly weak and could bother with extraneous sounds almost from the first kilometers of run. The problem was especially acute on pre-styling cars. Yes, and many original parts did not please with endurance, from shock absorbers to wheel bearings. If the car often drove off the track, then it was necessary to sort out the chassis every 50–70,000 kilometers. After restyling, the quality of many parts has improved significantly, but the chassis has remained quite problematic. Most often, stabilizer supports and consumables fail, resource 30–60,000 kilometers. Shock absorbers and wheel bearings last a little longer, on average they serve 70–80,000 kilometers. Ball joints are able to last about 100,000 km. Silent blocks of levers, depending on the load, withstand 100-150,000 km. Most of the details of the multi-link serve at the same amount. But the silent block of the subframe will have to be changed more often, once 60-80,000 km. Fortunately, they change as a separate part. In the breakup levers, rubber metal elements are quickly destroyed and the camber adjustment bolts turn sour. The steering system uses a rack and pinion mechanism with an electric power steering mounted on the shaft. In practice, the amplifier has proven itself positively and rarely bother with breakdowns. But the rail rarely withstand more than 100,000 km. For a short time, steering tips and rods are enough. They give up on our roads after 60,000 km. It is worth noting that for officials, the thrust is changed along with the rail. Another disadvantage is the creaking boot of the steering shaft, treated with aerosol lubricants. Of the main complaints about the Nissan Qashqai brakes, it is worth highlighting the weak parking brake mechanism and the presence of extraneous sounds from the pads when using analogs. The front brake pads serve 40-60,000 km. The rear ones up to 100,000 km. Salon. Interior trim materials Nissan Qashqai are quite budgetary and prone to the appearance of various kinds of noise. Most of all, the center console, armrest, rear shelf and audio system speakers bother with creaks. There are also complaints about the wear resistance of finishing materials. After 100,000 km, the steering wheel sheath, gear shift lever, power window buttons, door handle coating and leather seat upholstery, falls appear, have significant signs of wear. Quickly surrenders and adjusting the angle of inclination of the brackets of the front seats, especially under overall drivers. The sound insulation of the car, weak, also received a lot of criticism. In addition to acoustic comfort, this trouble can cause condensation between the roof and ceiling, accumulates in the skin. Many owners complain about a weak stove that slowly heats up the air in the car. There are problems with the reliability of the electrical equipment of the cabin. Most often, the car suffers such breakdowns as the failure of the automatic transmission lock electromagnet, the heater motor, the keyless entry antenna, and the rain sensor. On a short run, 100-120,000 km, the air conditioning compressor also fails. A signal of an imminent breakdown of the part will be a crunch and crackle that appears when the system is activated. The steering column cable can withstand about the same amount, in the event of a malfunction of which the airbag lights come on and the control buttons on the steering wheel stop working. Windows are also considered problematic, motors are rather weak, the wiring of the fifth door breaks on a bend. On older specimens, there is a risk of oxidation and decay of the wiring connectors located under the front pillar trim. As a result, the fuel pump and rear lighting equipment may not work. Finding a well-maintained Nissan Qashqai in the secondary market is not difficult, since most of these cars were operated by girls. However, even such instances do not guarantee further trouble-free operation. In this model, the chassis and the variator are at risk, in the event of a breakdown of which you will have to pay a tidy sum for repairs. Before buying, be sure to check the body numbers with the PTS or show the car to an expert, as the model was popular among car thieves. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.